Okay, thank you, everybody. I'd like to call the special meeting of the Board of Trustees to order March 10th at 7:30 p.m. Could we have the roll, please?
Yes. Trustee Clark?
Here.
Trustee Collin?
Here.
Trustee Davis-Ford?
Here.
Trustee Levison?
Present.
Trustee Rosner?
Here.
Trustee Schnall?
Here.
Village President Turpin?
Here.
Gary Lewis, Village Administrator. Stephen Rother, Village Council. Adam Lerner, Deputy Village Administrator. Myself, Chanel Smith, Acting Village Clerk / Deputy Clerk. Adequate notice of this meeting had been provided to the press in accordance with the Open Publics Meeting Act and JSA 10:4-6. In addition, notice of this meeting was posted in Village Hall and on the Village's website and has been filed in the office of the Village Clerk. Official action may be taken.
Thank you. We have one resolution to begin to go into executive session.
Resolution 2014-56, resolution authorizing an executive session at the March 10, 2014 meeting of the Board of Trustees.
The two matters to be discussed in executive session is Rescue Squad Maplewood Mutual Aid, which is a contract negotiation and attorney-client privilege, as well as Blockbuster Space, which is a contract negotiation and attorney-client privilege. Do I have a motion?
I move.
Moved by Trustee Collins, seconded by Trustee Levison. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Thank you. We'll be back here at 8 o'clock.
See you guys all later.
To reconvene this Board of Trustees meeting, could we please have a roll call?
Trustee Clark?
Still here.
Trustee Collin?
Here.
Trustee Davis Ford?
Here.
Trustee Levison?
Present.
Trustee Rosner?
Here.
Trustee Schnall?
Here.
Village President Turpie?
Here.
Barry Lewis, Village Administrator, Stephen Rother, Village Council, Adam Lerner, Deputy Village Administrator, and myself, Chanel Smith.
Thank you. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please stay standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. The first item on our agenda tonight is a swearing in for one of our newest police officers, which we're going to do in just a moment. Before we do so, I'd like to invite our Chief of Police, Jim Schallel, to come up and say a few words. Swearing in for one of our newest police officers, which we're going.
I'd just like to start off first by just thanking the trustees and the village administrator, town council, village council, just for having the foresight to bring aboard another police officer. Everybody knows here the importance of public safety. Without public safety and our community not feeling safe, we truly are the backbone. I'm sorry, truly public safety is the backbone of the community. Without public safety, how's that? Better?
Not sure. Yeah,
Okay.
No, pull it up.
yeah he gave the thumbs up.
I really said some important stuff too.
Do it again.
On the diaphragm, on the diaphragm.
All right.
It's on.
It's on now, okay, yeah,
There
good.
you go.
All right, I just want to thank the trustees and the village administrator, the town attorney. Public safety is the most important thing we have in our community. Without that, we truly have nothing. It's the foundation of our community. They had the foresight to bring another police officer on, Mark Wilkins. Started out with our department as a dispatcher, good man, and I know he's going to be a great addition to our department. Just to start out, it's my opinion as a police officer, I've been here for 29 years, the best part of our job is when you can have a positive impact on somebody's life every day. And that goes from possibly just a simple thing as helping a disabled motorist, an injured person, and the best part of our job is when, say, we take a violent offender off the streets. So it goes from just something very minor to something of a great nature like that. To Mark, I would say that when you're here, you'll experience something that'll take you to great highs and great lows. Never let either one of those overwhelm you. Treat everyone that you encounter on the job with great respect, no matter social status, race, creed, color. Always remember that everyone's entitled to the same treatment. With that, I'd like to wish Mark all the best. I know he worked very hard to get where he is today. He should be very proud of himself. His family should be proud of him. I'd like to just call him up now. Mark Wilkins. He's going to have his dad hold the Bible for him. Come on up here, Sean.
Looks like it's brown.
How's it going? You can stand right there. Raise your right hand. Place your left hand on the Bible. I, Mark Wilkins,
I, Mark Wilkins,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of the State of New Jersey,
of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will bear true faith
and that I will bear true faith
and allegiance to the same
and allegiance to the same,
and to the governments established
and to the governments established
in the United States
in the United States
and in this state,
and in this state,
under the authority of the people.
under the authority of the people.
I do further solemnly swear
I do further solemnly swear
that I will faithfully,
that I will faithfully,
impartially,
impartially,
and justly perform
and justly perform
all of the duties
all of the duties
as a police officer
as a police officer
in the Department of Public Safety Police Force for the Township of South Orange Village,
in the Department of Public Safety Police Force in the Township of South Orange Village,
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability,
and that I will not use my office
and that I will not use my office
to grant preferential treatment
to grant preferential treatment
nor seek personal gain,
nor seek personal gain,
favor,
favor,
or advantage
or advantage
not available to the public.
not available to the public.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Welcome to the team.
Yes.
Okay, enjoy your night.
Thank you, Chief, and congratulations again to our newest officer. I think I could speak for all the trustees when I say welcome, and we really look forward to having you here at the police department, and I think all of us would agree with what the chief said as far as how important public safety is to this community, and that we're here to do everything we can to support all of our police officers and the tremendous work that they do in South Orange here.
Are you going to invite them to stay for the rest of the meeting?
Well, we're not going to invite them to stay. They have to stay for the rest of the meeting.
Including Jim.
Right. A couple announcements before we do get started. Just one more reminder about Container Day. The next dates are April 26th, May 17th, June 21st, July 26th, August 23rd, September 27th. It's 8 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. On that Saturday down at the Department of Public Works. Just make sure you bring a form of ID, and that's for residents only, not commercial vehicles. If you have any questions about that, you can call 973-378-7741. One more pitch for volunteers. We've got a lot of really incredible residents working in a number of areas on committees and boards in town. We just brought a whole lot of new people onto some of our land use boards, the Planning Board, Board of Adjustment, Historic Preservation Commission, and we've still got a couple openings, one of which I was going to discuss a little bit later, but there's also the Public Information and Marketing Committee, which Trustee Steve Schnall has graciously agreed to chair if the committee so appoints him, which I'm sure they will. And so we're looking for some more residents to get involved in that committee as well. So if anybody is interested, just make sure to reach out to us. We had a great volunteering fair summit at Seton Hall University organized by the Community Relations Committee, and I think just reminded all of us the importance of making sure to get people involved in any way possible. So if you are interested, you can go to the website, southorange.org, find the community section and click on volunteering, and you'll see the list of what's available. And you can obviously reach out to any of us if you have questions about that. The Civic Engagement Institute, this is the Community Coalition on Races Civic Engagement Institute. It's a 4-week workshop held at the library. It's from 9:30 a.m. to 12:30 every Saturday on March 15th, March 22nd, March 29th, and April 5th. It's a free opportunity, and if you want to learn a little bit more about it, you can contact the Community Coalition on Race by visiting their website at twotowns.org or calling them at 973-767-6116. And I also want to announce the Third and Valley groundbreaking. We're all very excited about that. Everything was actually officially closed today, and a lot of hard work went into getting everything ready to actually start construction. So we're going to celebrate, kick off this really momentous occasion for our downtown, and that is March 21st at 10 a.m., and that is at Third and Valley. And if folks are on Facebook, there is an event from the Village's Facebook page. You can RSVP there. If you have any questions about it, we are asking people to RSVP ahead of time if possible. You can also contact administration here if you'd like to be there and are not on Facebook and still want to make sure to RSVP. So we're very excited about that. It should be a really great event. At this time, I'd like to open the meeting up for public comments. If there's any member of the public who wishes to speak, please come forward. Got one sign up. Alyssa? We're on to it.
Good evening, Mayor Tarpey, trustees. My name is Alyssa Aronson. I'm a resident of Rose Avenue, South Orange. My question is, how come you haven't had your annual address to the residents yet?
Thank you. Okay, is there anybody else who wishes to speak? Okay, I'd like to close public comments. I think the question was about my State of the Village. Yes. And that's a great question. Actually, I had discussed just recently, wish I had the discussion a little bit sooner, but with our administration, and one of the things that I was actually going to talk about a little bit later, but happy to answer now, which is trying to find the right time to do this. So there had never been a State of the Village done that anybody remembered before I started it when I came in 2011. And so what we wanted to do is find a time that would not require that a village president just elected have to give an address. So, for example, not a month after the elections in May, so not in June or any time right after that, where there wouldn't really necessarily be a whole lot to talk about. Also, we're concerned about having it right before the elections so that it couldn't be used in some sort of political fashion. So ultimately, what we ended up deciding to do, which is unfortunate because I will lose a year in an opportunity to speak, although we'll certainly I'll certainly still provide an annual update. It just may not be in a formal event. And what we're going to do is just do it in January of every year. So in most towns and most places that do an annual address, they do it in January because that's people are getting sworn in or elected in November. And so you see in January tons of cities across the state hold their State of the City addresses. But we decided because our budget is on a calendar year, that it actually would make a fair amount of sense to have it in January. And that gives an opportunity for an incoming village president to have a fair amount of time in town before they have to give their first address, but it's also equally far away from the election that it wouldn't really get politicized during election season. So I wish I had figured that out last November so we could do it in January, but what I'll make sure to still do is provide an annual address that I've done in the Gaslight, so that basically, or an annual update about what's been going on, and then we'll have for 2015 a State of the Village scheduled for January, and hopefully what we can do is somehow codify that either through just administration or whatever, that basically that's the time that this would happen every year going forward, and make sure that all the future village presidents actually do that. So thank you for the question. We have one resolution for separate action. A few resolutions for separate action.
Resolution 2014-65, a resolution of the Township of South Orange Village, making application to the local finance board pursuant to NJSA 48:2-51.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis, do you want to just give a brief summary of what this is?
Yeah, the two resolutions, and I'm going to follow up with an explanation of the next section. The first one is an authorization to make an application to the local finance board for the proposed refunding of the ECIA loan, which is the ordinance 2014-04, next on the agenda. The second resolution provides and authorizes through temporary appropriations to fund the capital improvement fund to provide the down payment for the bond ordinance that is next, is 2014-05. And that's why these are A, have to be separate action, and B, have to precede the first reading of the ordinance. So for that reason, I would say still move forward with this. Unfortunately, and I'll break the news now, the two ordinances, an additional prerequisite to those ordinances is the execution of a supplemental debt statement by the CFO. And unfortunately, the closeout of the 2013 books by the former CFO is just finally being completed, and the capital fund general ledger was only completed this weekend. The auditor was at the offices all day today in the hopes of getting this all finalized so we could have the supplemental debts for this evening. Unfortunately, was not able to do so. So while I'm going to say go ahead and move forward with the resolution since they're on the agenda and they don't have to be done the same night, they just have to be done before, I would say move forward with that. But regrettably, the two ordinances are going to have to be deferred to the March 24th meeting because of the delay in the ability to get the ADS done, which allows for the completion of the SDS, all of which relates back to the closing of the books. Which in fact is late.
Pardon me?
Which in fact has a statutory February 10th date.
That's correct. Okay. Are there any questions or comments on that?
A question regarding the ordinance. Does that mean you'd like us to table the ordinance?
The ordinances will look to table to the next meeting. Spoke with the auditor about 5 o'clock tonight, and he's confident this will be done in a day or two. But again, the books were just closed out by the former CFO this weekend, so he didn't really have an opportunity to get it finished. But so table those, the two resolutions. You could either table those and do those. Next meeting, immediately before those, my suggestion would be, since they're on the agenda, just go ahead and do them now. So that step's at least behind us.
Would there be any substantive changes to either the resolutions or the ordinance that's posted tonight that we would want to just strike it and wait for a new ordinance?
No, the resolutions, you can adopt them tonight. They will remain identical. The ordinances will remain identical. It's just having the supplemental debt statement, which is a requirement that be filed with the clerk before the first reading of bond ordinances, and these are both bond ordinances, a refunding bond and the supplemental debt statement is essentially you do the calculation to reflect what this new authorized debt would impact on your debt, and do the calculation to ensure that you're not exceeding your statutory debt limit. Well, the basis to do that is you work off the annual debt statement, which is, as Trustee Levison asserted, is required and supposed to be done by February 10th. But for it to be done, the books have to be closed out. So this all sort of, it's a ripple effect of the books not being closed out in a timely fashion, which I'm confident will not occur in the future with the new regime in finance, but it is what it is. So none of the documents should change. I'm comfortable moving forward with the resolutions tonight. The ordinances should remain identical for the next meeting. So I would say just adjourn them to the next meeting, carry them.
Okay, I move Resolution 065.
Okay, moved by Trustee Column,
Second.
seconded by Trustee Reisner. Could we have the roll, please?
Roll call. Trustee Clark?
Yes.
Trustee Column?
Yes.
Trustee Davis Ford?
Yes.
Trustee Levison?
Yes.
Trustee Rosner?
Yes.
Trustee Schnall?
Yes.
The board has approved Resolution 2014-65.
I move Resolution 066.
Moved by Trustee Column,
Second.
seconded by Trustee Rosner. Could we have the roll, please?
Trustee Column?
Yes.
Trustee Davis Ford?
Yes.
Trustee Levison?
Yes.
Trustee Rosner?
Yes.
Trustee Schnall?
Yes.
The board has approved Resolution 2014.
Trustee
Yes.
Clark.
Trustee Clark?
Trustee Clark? Yes. I thought I heard you. The board has approved Resolution 2014-66.
Okay, next, our ordinance for first reading.
Well, we're going to just
We are, although.
bypass them
Read it
for
by
now?
Yeah, if
title
you just want to
first.
read the title first,
Sure.
yeah.
But, Barrett, I thought you said that we can't read it on first reading unless we have the statement.
We're just going to read it.
You're
so
just
we can-
reading
read
it.
title.
It'll come
So we
back
can take-
exactly
we
the
can
same on the
table
next
it, yeah.
agenda.
Okay, sorry.
Ordinance 2014-04, refunding bond ordinance of the Township of South Orange Village in the County of Essex, State of New Jersey, providing for the refunding of all the outstanding pool governmental loan programs bonds of the Essex County Improvement Authority issued for the benefit of the village, authorizing the issuance of not exceeding $2,500,000 aggregate principal amount, or of refunding bonds of the village village to effect such refunding and appropriating the proceeds thereof.
Okay, is there a motion to table?
I move to table.
Okay, motion by Trustee Column, seconded by Trustee Levison. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, abstentions?
Can Barry just explain a little bit more about it? That in fact we are,
There's no discussion.
What the
About the
two will
ECIA?
be. Yeah, well, I mean, just certainly for the public's benefit who may have tuned in and may want to know to tune in next week. The first ordinance, 2014-04, the village a number of years ago, as part of the overall financing for SOPAC, the last sort of phase of it, obtained funding through the Essex County Improvement Authority at ECIA, which is a sort of a pooled funding source where municipalities can benefit from the county's overall credit rating and also sort of group borrowing, which at the time was likely an attractive option. The problem with the model is that as more people drop out of it, there are certain administrative expenses that are spread across who's ever remaining in the pool. And the majority of all the towns that were previously in it have now either refunded theirs, paid theirs off, or dropped out. And really, at this point, it's only Essex County and us. And as a result, we've seen our proportional share of the administrative expenses continue to increase, which has led the overall, while the interest rate is, may appear attractive when you look at the overall cost of the money and you add in the administrative expenses, that cost has risen, coupled with the volatility of interest rates and not locking in long-term, historically low rates, together with the potential that the county currently has two issues in the pool and we have the third. One of the county ones is being retired, I think, next year, so it will become a bigger share of the administrative expenses. So when we projected it out, we worked very closely with Phoenix Funding, our financial advisors. Trustee Levison is chair of the Finance Committee. We did all the projections, and by doing this refunding, locking in the sort of the current long-term, low-interest rates, the projection is we'll save $70,000, and that's over a fairly conservative projection of where the ECIA may go, and it would, if anything, only get worse than that. So I think overall, very good move, again, similar to the refunding that we did last year, where we did the bond sale to lock in and eliminate all our short-term revolving notes. So that's what that is. And then the second ordinance that will also now be on for the 24th is just the initial phase of our 2014 capital improvement program. Includes some road projects. We'll have all the details certainly out before then. Some IT improvements, some police improvements.
Thank you. And I just want to also just make sure to thank Mr. Lewis and Trustee Levison for just being so diligent with especially the ECIA, but some of these other pieces of the finance our backbone as well. It's just really going to make a big difference over time. So that was moved and that was tabled. The next, our next ordinance.
Okay, we didn't finish the vote. And just for clarity,
Did we not?
and not like I'm the guru on Robert's rules, but there's no talking, once you table something, there's no talking on a motion. We either talk about it before or we talk about it afterwards, but not
I
in
thought we
between the
finished the
vote.
vote.
Yeah, we finished the vote. We did take the, everybody was in
No.
favor.
We did?
Yeah,
He did a voice
Yeah, that's
vote.
why-
Yeah, voice
and
vote,
not
yeah.
a-
that's why I asked afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah,
heard that?
we'll do that before next
We
time. but
did,
yeah,
we
did.
missed that. Sorry. Okay.
So the next ordinance,
Ordinance 2014-5, bond ordinance for various capital improvements.
is there a motion to table this one?
Move.
Okay, moved by Trustee Levison.
Second.
Seconded by Trustee Clark. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Thank you. Next is our consent agenda.
Okay, Resolution 2014-57, resolution awarding a competitive contract to Pat Scallon Landscaping for alternate bid number 1 through number 4 listed in the bid specifications for the mowing of large turf areas within the Township of South Orange Village for calendar year 2014 in the amount of $38,896. Resolution 2014-58, a resolution awarding a contract, and please forgive the mispronunciation, D'Onofrio and Son, Inc., for the mowing of large turf areas in the Township of South Orange Village for calendar year 2014, an amount of $28,345.94. Resolution 2014-59, resolution of South Orange Village, County of Essex, declaring its intent to fully comply with its Mount Laurel obligations voluntarily and seeking to secure the benefits that our laws provide to municipalities that commit to comply voluntarily, protection from Mount Laurel lawsuits. Resolution 2014-60, resolution appointing Brown & Brown Assurance and as the risk manager for the Township of South Orange Village. Resolution 2014-61, a resolution granting raffle license 1247 to the PTO Wyoming School for an on-premise merchandise raffle. Resolution 2014-62, resolution granting raffle license number 1248 to the PTO Wyoming School for an on-premise 50/50 cash raffle. Resolution 2014-63, resolution granting raffle license 1249 to the Lions Club of South Orange for an off-premise cash raffle. Resolution 2014-64, resolution hiring an animal control officer in the South Orange Police Department.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments on the consent agenda?
Yes, I have a question. On number 64?
Yeah, that, just to clarify, and I knew where trustee, that, if I would suggest and ask that it be amended, actually under our code, the health officers under the the animal control officers under health department. There were older resolutions or it's not entirely clear to me, but why it was carried as being under the police department, but both under our code and under state statute, it falls under the health department. So I would suggest an amendment to that resolution to reflect that the appointment is being done under the health department.
Okay, so we'll do that one separately so we can amend it. Are there any other questions or comments?
Yes, can we go over 059? Maybe Mr. Rother, can you go over that a little bit?
Not sure. Rather than put Mr. Rother on the spot, this is a resolution that was provided to us by our co-counsel, Jeff Serenian. It was urged that we adopted it in connection with there's ongoing litigation, ongoing efforts relating to COA, specifically in substance, it's related to, there's ongoing litigation. It was most recently ruled where certain affordable housing advocates were pressing the fact that COA had not yet created the new regulations. They were pressing to ask the court to do two things. One, to have somebody appointed to write the regulations, but more concerning, I think, in the immediate to municipalities was they're pressing to have essentially all substantive certification thrown out the window, subjecting every town and making you subject to potential builder's remedy lawsuits. This was a resolution. It's a form resolution that was drafted, I think, jointly by our council, who represents quite a number of municipalities, as well as a handful of other sort of COA council specialists who were encouraging all their towns to adopt this resolution, indicating that, you know, the towns don't hold us responsible for COA's failure to prepare regulations. We intend to, and we're committed to honoring our obligations. So it's, you know, legally, the substance, it's more of a, you know, I don't want to say feel good, but it's expressing our commitment to honor sort of the spirit of COA, and I think intended to support the position that, you know, COA didn't do the regulations, but don't make us liable for builders' remedy suits because they didn't.
That's kind of the essence of my question, because I read through it. I've been following this very closely, but it seemed more like, I don't want to use the term feel good because it's important for us to make a statement like this, but we have been compliant. I think we've gone above and beyond in our duty. And so I was just curious about the immunity that was referenced in it, or whether we were looking at any builder's remedy or anything like that.
We're not aware of any at the time, but, you know, again, it is, you know, it is what it is. There's no particular legal impact to it other than reiterating our commitment and intention to sort of, again, honor the spirit of COA. And again, it was largely directed to, you know, not having the court make the municipalities the victim of COA's you know, neglect in meeting the deadlines that the court imposed.
Well, there's a second part to my question, which is under the be it resolved number 2, the village hereby directs its Mount Laurel professionals to draft a declaratory complaint in accordance with applicable law. What does that language mean?
That is in response to, and it really isn't a complaint, it's more in response because I think actually the housing advocates, they brought the motion and the intent, if necessary, and I think a certain amount of this is at least in the immediate term mooted, because the court did just the other day announce its decision and declined to open towns to the, so this was in the event that Fair Share Housing, and I think they had some other people joined in them, were successful in their motion to bring a declaratory complaint and go seek, you know, go to a higher court to declare that we would not be subject to that. I think largely a lot of that is mooted based on the most recent ruling. I don't know if that's going to go up. That was at the appellate division. Don't know if Fair Share Housing is going to appeal that. The appellate division did impose another deadline on COA for the regulations and indicated that if they failed to meet that, they would call all the commissioners who would be potentially personally subject to contempt. So we'll see if that works. But in the short run, I don't think that that's going to be triggered, and ideally never. But the thought would be if they had obtained a ruling that would expose us to builders' remedy suits, this would authorize us collectively with all the other towns and jointly with the other COA council to seek some legal redress for a declaratory complaint.
Okay, that answers all my questions. Thank you.
Okay, unless there's any other questions or comments, I have a motion for the consent agenda minus 264, or sorry, 064.
I move.
Moved by trustee Column.
Second.
Seconded by trustee Levison. Could we have the roll, please?
Yes.
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 I move to amend Resolution 064 to reflect hiring an animal control officer under the South Orange Health Department.
Is there a second?
Second?
Yeah, there's an additional piece to that. It should be noted that I was just sending it out, that it should be part-time as well.
Yeah, that's correct. This, and by way of background, we, and it was alluded to in my report, our long time, and I was going to address it later, but I'll take the opportunity now to recognize and thank Richard Ash, Dick Ash, as we know him, who was a 44-year employee of the village. He started in the water department, worked many years in the water department, and then when we entered into the East Orange water contract, took over. He had done some sort of off-hours animal control work, became the full-time animal control officer. Dick just recently retired. We were all kind of stunned. I mean, we knew the retirement was coming, but he announced the retirement, and by some way we don't understand, the papers were all processed and he got it in a couple of weeks, which is usually a 3-4 month process. So kind of caught us off guard. We certainly wish Dick well, thank him for his service, but in the interim, a couple of stopgap measures. This provides the appointment part-time on an hourly basis for after-hours work. We're continuing to, since Dick's departure, the health officer's working with the, I think it's called Associated Humane, to do the daytime coverage. We're exploring then options which may include going back to full-time health officer, shared services, outsourcing, all possibilities. We thought we were going to have 3 or 4 months to evaluate those options, and it just happened quicker. So again, to clarify, this is a part-time position on an hourly basis.
And I'll just add one thing just quickly about Dick Ash, too. And thank you for saying that about him. He's been with the village for so long. Throughout the entire time that he's been employed, he's also been volunteering on the rescue squad. I mean, he is like a person truly committed to service in South Orange. We definitely thank him for doing that. So there was a motion and a second by Trustee Clark for the amendment. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
I move the resolution.
Okay, moved by Trustee Column.
Second.
Seconded by Trustee Rosner. Could we have the roll, please? Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to open the meeting up to public comments. If there's any member of the public who wishes to speak at this time. Seeing as there's no members of the public who wish to speak, I'd like to close public comments. And unless there's any new business needed for this meeting, ask for a motion to adjourn. Okay. Moved by Trustee Levison.
Second.
Seconded by Trustee Davis Ford. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, I would now like to call to order our conference agenda at 8:33 p.m. Could we have the roll? Sometimes people do sneak out in between these roll calls.
Roll call, Trustee Clark.
Here.
Trustee Column.
Here.
Trustee Davis Ford.
Here.
Trustee Levison.
Present.
Trustee Rosner.
Here.
Trustee Schnall.
Here.
Village President Torby.
Here.
Barry Lewis, Village Administrator. Stephen Rother, Village Council. Adam Lerner, Deputy Village Administrator. Myself, Schnall Smith. Adequate notice of this meeting have been provided to the press in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act and JSA 10:4-6. In addition, notice of this meeting is posted in a bulletin board at 76 South Orange Avenue and on the village's website and has been filed in the office of the village clerk. Official action may not be taken.
Thank you. All right, so I'll start with my report. The first is an open data ordinance. So this is something I believe I've brought up before in my report a while back on a couple of occasions. Basically, the idea is an ordinance that would codify, that would do a couple things. One is codify some of the incredible things that South Orange has been doing for a long time about making data more available to people. We really do a better job than 99% of the other towns in New Jersey, and most of that is informal, just because most of the people who have been on the governing body have been committed to doing things in a transparent way. So all of course, organizational theory and public administration and all that, right, we need to codify those best practices and make sure that the people who come after us, who may not always be as well-intentioned as we are required to abide by those same guidelines. So part of this ordinance would be taking some of the things that we do, for example, now like posting the budget in an Excel spreadsheet, so it's in a machine-readable format, posting all the minutes and agendas and resolutions, ordinances, everything like that online in a searchable fashion, which a lot of places don't do. And so there's a handful of things like that we're just figuring out the best way to word to codify it. And then a couple new things as well, just to make sure that Oprah requests are available so people can see potentially, if we're allowed to, which hopefully we'll be able to, is anyone who's already submitted a Oprah request and has gotten the response, any member of the public could just go look at it, and they don't necessarily have to come back and file another one. So a big kind of underlying part of this, that's kind of a secondary goal, is actually reducing the workload on the clerk's office and some of the administration by making documents more available. And if you talk to our clerk's office versus clerks in other towns where they don't put things online, everybody's kind of starting to do that now because they realize putting more stuff on the website cuts down on the amount of time you have to spend filing Oprah requests, and that's certainly not a small burden of having to do that. So there's a handful of other things. I've worked with a couple nonprofit organizations, including the Citizens Campaign in New Jersey, the Sunlight Foundation, which is a national organization, as well as the Department of Community Affairs Division of Local Government Services. So trying to get some of the best practices together and make an ordinance that not only will work for us, but will also be scalable to other towns. So that'll basically be a model ordinance. We do it in South Orange, and hopefully other towns, we can convince other towns to do the same thing and codify some of these best practices. So that's what that's about. And we are not at the point yet. We're still kind of doing some research on basically how much would it cost to do these things. We want to provide for open data, but we don't want to burden by making it cost more, so grandfathering things in, et cetera. And if anybody's interested, I can share, a draft of that. It's still very much a working document. I also just want to thank...
Can I ask a quick question on that one?
Yeah, sure.
Can you work with the Finance and IT Committee on that also before it comes to the full board?
Sure.
As an ordinance? And the other suggestion, and this goes back to Oprah and making documents available, one of the things I believe was referenced before is that at some point the village posted the supplemental materials for resolutions that get posted in the agenda. A lot of them refer to another document. So one of the things that we could do that would probably minimize the amount of requests for information is to go ahead and post what we get in our agenda packet for the public to see. So that when a resolution says, see exhibit whatever, that can be pulled up on the website as well.
Supposed to.
But it's currently not.
Well,
It used to be, yeah.
It used to be.
It's supposed to be that way. Like a contract or a reference material should be attached to that resolution.
So we'll
We'll make sure that it's, because currently the way we do it, it's when we're sent the files separately, and it's separate from the resolution itself, we upload it in a PDF, which is titled the same, but it says attachment next to it. But what we can do is just print and scan the resolution and the attachment so that it just, there's a
That would be
flow.
fantastic,
Yeah,
just
instead
for the
of-
benefit of the public.
But that's why that's been happening, but like you're saying, that's the better way to
Great.
do it.
And
so
what I'll
it's
make sure to
right
do
there.
too is note that in this ordinance, that will be, basically what we're doing is kind of stipulating, tallying out the different documents that need to be made available like that, and that can be one of them listed, to make sure that that's always in.
In addition, one other thing we're looking at, and I've done it in other municipalities, is essentially the packet that you all get as a single PDF. Sometimes there are maybe closed session things in there that we'd have to remove, but to make a separate scan of the entire packet and
Right.
get that in a certain location of the website, so residents sort of have one-stop shopping. They don't have to look at the agenda, then go look up each individual resolution, that they'd get just the whole packet in one spot that they could view.
Actually, where
Also-
we post the agenda itself probably would be the best place to just
Have the whole
post the
packet.
entire packet, yeah.
And President Torpey, I know you've used this before, but something like SlideShare where you can embed the document so people don't even have to download it, where they can just scroll through it very quickly.
Absolutely.
Would be very helpful.
And we're going to go a step beyond that with our new website too, which is basically all of the documents like minutes and agendas. As they come out, they'll get posted to the website basically as like a blog post. So everything will be searchable and findable in the website as well as and that will be basically embedded in there. So if people like subscribe to the village's RSS feed, for example, they'll get an update every time an agenda comes out or every time the minutes come out. They won't have to constantly keep checking. As soon as it posts, they'll get a notification.
That's great.
So I want to make that stuff as easy as possible.
Perfect.
So also, I just wanted to thank everybody and the teachers and our third grader from South Mountain, Benjamin Jacinto, for the village president for a day. We just got really great feedback from the students and the classes about it. Everybody was really happy, and so look forward to continuing to do that. Emergency alerts, we'll move this to the announcement section for the next meeting, the next couple meetings, but it basically a reminder for everybody to, we switched our emergency notification system to a new system, Everbridge. It's been switched over for a while. We were working on figuring out the best way for the sign-up process to work, especially as we were rolling out public stuff in our SO Connect app. But basically, that we're asking people, if you want to sign up for emergency alerts, go to southorange.org/alerts. Please make sure to sign up. Every time there's a weather event, we see the smaller ones, you see a dozen or so signups maybe. So people are always signing up right beforehand, but, make sure you get your name, your email, your phone number, home phone number, cell phone number in there as soon as possible. And what we're going to be able to do with the system is take a little bit better advantage of this information so that we can not only send out emergency alerts, like hit the whole list, but we're going to start doing a monthly email newsletter as well, just from kind of an outreach perspective from the village, as well as be able to do it by location. So if there's a water main break or something like that, we'll be able to target a very specific area and just do alerts there. So just, and what we could do too, and I don't know if somebody wants to volunteer to bridge this to some of the neighborhood associations, but just, have them hit all their membership lists and make sure they all get to their members to sign up again. So I'll forward a little intro paragraph to the board, and whoever wants to send that along to as many neighborhood associations as possible, I'll get them to get their members signed up. That would be great.
President Torpey, quick question. If residents forgot whether they, there's been a couple of changes in technology. If they go in, does it confirm whether they, or do they just re-enroll in it? Or?
It's not going to create any duplicate entries or anything. So if people are unsure, you could just go in and, fill it out. It takes a couple minutes, make sure your most up-to-date information is in there. So it's not going to, there's no problems from our side. Depending on how they enter the information in, it may or may not pick up when they do it and say, you already have an account, but it will merge the.
So if Steve Schnall went in and Steve Vin Schnall went in, I mean, does it have a
when you put the phone number in or the email address or anything like that, it's going to combine the records. So you're not going to get you're not going to get two emails, Dear Steve and then Dear Steven.
Right.
So if people are unsure, they should just go in and just make sure we've got all your up-to-date information. It can't hurt. The next, third-party Bitcoin payment processing. I couldn't figure out a better way to say that. Basically, what we're looking at is a third-party merchant services vendor that we would be able to use to accept payments for anything that we accept payments for right now: taxes, fees, permits, licenses, anything. What this vendor does is one of the payment methods of payment that they accept is by Bitcoin. And what they do is they take that Bitcoin payment, they convert it to U.S. dollars, and they pay us in U.S. dollars. So even though it would be maybe fun to accept Bitcoins directly, that's something that I don't think any of us are interested in doing. There's too much risk in a new currency like this. So basically, by working with a third party, there's zero risk whatsoever for the village because people pay the processor calculates the exchange rate. We've been speaking to some vendors, and what they'll be able to do, for example, is show the actual exchange rate right before the person pays. So, I don't know how many people here are too familiar with Bitcoins, but, the exchange rate is extremely volatile, which is kind of another reason why we could never take it directly, at least in any foreseeable future. But basically, to make sure the resident knows that if they do feel like paying in Bitcoins for whatever reason, that they're getting either a good deal or not a good deal, and they would know that before they actually pay, because they'll get the exchange rate right there. So the person pays the company, and the company, they are guaranteed to pay us the U.S. dollar amount that we require. And because Bitcoin there's basically no transaction fee associated with doing the transaction, they're actually able to charge a less of a fee to people using the system than a credit card processor does. Everyone, right, you've got to pay 2 or 3% to process a credit card. American Express and a couple others are a little higher. The cool thing about Bitcoin, just in general, if anyone who's listening who's maybe not that familiar with it, is that it's a micropayment, not just a regular payment. So you can actually make it economical to pay people in pennies at a time, which could be a totally game-changing revelation for how content is bought and sold online, and how people earn a living, because right now you can't do transactions for such a small amount of money because the transaction fee is actually higher than the amount. So Bitcoin is a really interesting thing. Any digital currency is really interesting because it doesn't cost anything to move the currency around. It's just whatever the companies who operate it decide to charge for their services. So again, the idea is to open that up so if people do want to do that. I don't know if we've got any Bitcoin aficionados in South Orange. Maybe we do. We're a pretty forward-thinking community. So even though there are companies like Overstock.com, which does like $1 billion of business a year, Tiger Direct, a lot of online retailers, I think Amazon is considering it. And even though a lot of places are starting to take Bitcoin, again, just to be very clear with everybody here and anybody who's watching, there's absolutely no intermingling of Bitcoin and the village's money. It goes to a third party. We are guaranteed the exact amount of money that the person owes us, whether it's for a tax payment or for anything else. The company transfers the Bitcoin to US dollars, and we get paid in US dollars, just like if someone had paid with a credit card.
And there's no charge to the village for this service, I assume?
No, and in fact, if they do a fee, it would be a fee to the user, but it would most likely be less than a credit card processing fee.
So in your opinion, I'm seeing it, that there's no difference than if somebody had euros and they went to a bank.
That's exactly right.
Convert it in the euros, we're getting paid in US dollars.
We're getting paid in US dollars.
Technically, we're only accepting US dollars. It's just you're making a mechanism so if somebody had Bitcoins, they could pay the village.
That's correct.
Right,
It would be
and,
right.
I mean, to echo what the village president said, and I'm, I guess maybe an older generation, I don't tweet and Facebook, so I was more skeptical of the Bitcoins, and we sat in on the call, and, I've made it very clear that my biggest concern was any risk to the village. The way it's structured, there will be clear disclaimers for the person utilizing the service that their account with us is not credited unless and until we actually receive the dollars, so they're the ones assuming the risk of this third party, no fees to us, so it's, I'm comfortable enough to continue exploring it. I think we've provided, they were going to provide us some information.
Yeah,
We're
we just
providing
got
them some information. If it gives another outlet and another mechanism to pay to our residents at no risk to us and no cost to us, why not?
Okay.
Mr. President, this is another one that I'd like the Finance and IT Committee to be involved with before something comes to the full board, because I'm not familiar with it. I'd feel comfortable if 3 other trustees were a little more involved.
Yeah, that's no problem.
Thank you.
The Public Information and Marketing Committee, I mentioned it earlier, but we had a little bit of a hiatus. We're going to kind of restart things. Trustee Steve Schnall is going to hopefully chair the committee and has expressed a lot of interest in, kind of ramping up some of these outreach activities and has a couple ideas himself. We've still got a handful of residents that have been involved with that, and we've kind of emailed a little bit back and forth, but really haven't taken full advantage of the group. So we're really excited about that. So if there are people that are watching that are interested specifically in this, please reach out to me, and we'll get you some more information about the committee. Our meeting actually is Thursday at 7 p.m. In the conference room at 76 South Orange Ave. So anybody who's interested, feel free to attend. I think it's mostly going to be a little bit of a catch-up, voting for a new chair, and just kind of a little quick discussion about what projects we might be thinking about working on. I don't know if you have anything, Trustee Schnall, you want to add about that.
Well, you actually you alluded to me. There are a number of things that would fall within this committee, and you talked about the neighborhood associations and getting information out. That's just part of it. I mean, we talked about it actually at the volunteer summit. In my opinion, it's bi-directional. It's things that we need to do to talk to our residents and get the information out, and it's also the other way. So if we are perhaps doing surveys, at times looking to get information, as I said, in both directions. I also see it as a way of increasing engagement in the community, so volunteering and participation. So I think one of the things that I'd like to do to kick off once the committee gets established is to take a look at a framework, and actually Deputy Administrator Adam Leonard and I were talking about a way of taking a look at all the types of communications, looking at the audiences, all the stakeholders, what the intention of a activity would be and the context. And by doing that, we can take a look and prioritize our initiatives. So it should be actually, I think it's going to be very...
Sounds great.
And part of the idea, too, is that one of the responsibilities from Mr. Lerner's office as Deputy Administrator is public relations, and that he can work a little bit with this committee in starting to plan out some of the policies, not only, but also some of the actual implementations.
Right.
So that's everything that I had. Mr. Lewis?
Yeah, I did provide a long-awaited written monthly report, and we'll be on schedule to do those going forward. A couple of the highlights, I won't read the whole report, obviously, but one relates to the budget and the 2014 budget. We had a couple good budget workshops. Things continue to evolve. Part of what I alluded to in terms of closing out the books, allowing the auditor and the CFO to complete the annual financial statement, which kind of plugs in some of the numbers and confirms some of the underlying numbers that I've utilized, which I'm confident in. So those will all be incorporated. There are some other new, more recent developments. Some of you, I alluded to in my report, and I'll have a much more detailed report coming in the next day or two. We do have some unanticipated exposures. Most recently, we received invoices from the state for some past pension liabilities from a time when the police was out of contract for 08, 09, 10, and 11 that could have a significant impact on the budget. We're in the process of sort of reconciling and verifying those figures and evaluating what our options are. I've been in contact with the auditors, bond counsel, and those entities. So before I wanted to make sure we had as complete a picture as possible to present to you. So look for that in the next couple of days, and I think that combined with the AFS will sort of crystallize where we are in the budget. So I'll have something for you in the next week or two, and then we will look to hopefully introduce our budget, if not on the 24th, then certainly by the first meeting in April. I would like to also sort of expound upon, as the village president referenced earlier, the Third and Valley transaction with Jonathan Rose finally closed today. It was a long process. It was rewarding to me because that was one of the very first things I think when I first got here is when we were awarding and choosing Jonathan Rose as the redeveloper. So that's one I've been with from almost start to finish, and it's certainly not finished because it's not constructed. But I think it's a big moment for South Orange, for the village. It's a next huge step in sort of the revitalization of the downtown and the rebirth. It's very exciting. A lot of credit to trustees before you, except for probably Trustee Rosner, because he was probably here throughout the entire duration, but for setting up the redevelopment zone, identifying that property, acquiring those properties, going out with the RFP. Certainly a lot of credit to all the planning board members who sat through not only the redevelopment plan amendments and pretty extended site plan amendments, recognize Joe Bauman and Aaron Law from their firm, and all the current board. So it's just an exciting day. Again, I'd reiterate the groundbreaking is scheduled for March 21st at 10 a.m. We'd certainly welcome all the residents and the public to join us. It's an exciting event. Currently, the long-term forecast has it 55 and sunny, so that's another good reason to show up. So that's just wanted to expound upon that. One component of that is also as a result of that, the parking lot had to be closed. Notices went out. I'll reiterate on behalf of the village and the parking authority that certainly we could have done better in notifying the public. We'll kind of repeat our apology to the public. Working to make it work long term. I'm not going to reiterate the entire plan, but it is laid out on the website, so anyone who didn't get the emails from the parking authority, and this relates to the resident commuter parking spaces, is a pretty detailed explanation of the alternate options that are available on the website. In substance, we lost 133 resident commuter permit spaces. It's been replaced by 140, some of them probably more attractive and more closer, and some of them are a little bit further. But I think they provide as good an alternative as we could under the circumstances to allow this. Reiterate that at the end of the tunnel here, and hopefully 2 years or less, when that project comes online, we then have now a state-of-the-art covered structured parking garage. We increase up to 255 public parking spaces from the current number. So it'll long-term provide much greater opportunities for our parkers. We appreciate their patience on that. Village Hall, the update, I know that it appears from the outside that it looks like there's been a lull. You'll recall last fall we awarded the contract to the asbestos abatement contractor. They went through the contract and the paperwork process, got the permits. The work started. They completed the non-friable abatement, removal of the piping installation, the pipes, some of that work. All the work that they can be done in the pre-containment phase was completed. Once that was completed, the next step, if the containment phase is when, because of the friable or airborne risk, is when the whole building has to be sealed with a lot of controls, environmental controls. In order to do that, and because a lot of that work is destructive and they are taking down plaster on the walls, the power to the building had to be disconnected by PSE&G and then a temporary power service installed. Unfortunately, PSE&G was not as expeditious as we would have hoped, so there's been certainly a period where everybody's sort of been at the mercy of PSE&G waiting to get that installed. That was now finally installed, so they're back mobilizing. The paperwork's in place. There is a waiting period. They have to notify DEP and the inspectors. That work will begin in earnest. from the period that the start date of by March. They have a 60-day period to complete, which takes us to the end of April. So we're in the timeline projected was to have it completed by April 25th. So we're still right on target with that timeline. At the same time, and sort of overlapping that, while we did lose some time on the abatement, there were other components that were on a certain schedule, so that the amount time lost on the abatement project was not necessarily time lost in the entire project timeline, because the contractor pre-qualification process is unfolded. We did receive on, I think, March 5th, last Wednesday, I believe it was, I think 9 contractor pre-qualification packages. Those are currently being reviewed by the architect. We have a project meeting on Wednesday where we'll all discuss those contractor pre-qualifications. Ultimately, it's the architect that will make a recommendation of a number. Anyone, could be all 9 or some lesser number of pre-qualified. This is for the general contractor work, and that would be for the board for the next meeting. Technically, the board then adopts a resolution declaring these are the people that are pre-qualified. Then the process will continue to unfold. So we're still on schedule for that. Our timeline that we posted the last time is based upon that March 24th approval of pre-qualified contractors. And then from there, we go to bidding and hope to keep the project on schedule. So just so people know, I mean, work was underway. There were some unavoidable delays attributable. Initially, there was also an issue with DEP in reviewing the methods that the contractor was going to use, but then ultimately it was PSE&G. One sort of reminder that occurred to me, and I heard over the weekend that we had some residents who are, I think, fairly well connected and in tune to the village that still had not heard of SO Connect. So just a little reminder to everyone, SO Connect is our sort of 311 and service request portal that we've now developed. It's an app that's available either for your computer and on your smartphones at either the iTunes Store or the App Store. Search SO Connect and you'll find it. It's a really, as it's starting to gain steam, we're seeing more and more requests.
How do you spell that?
SO and then Connect. So it's South Orange, but SO in the word Connect.
No space.
No space. And if you search that, you'll find it's an easy download. It's a fairly easy user interface. A lot of new things are developing. Credit to Trustee Levison, who coordinated with PSE&G, as well as Deputy Administrator Lerner and the village president, to have our app now directly, when you choose one of the options on there is to report a streetlight outage, it now directly emails PSE&G. And it's something that PSE&G, just as recently as the other day, I did write back to Trustee Levison that it's working out. They appreciate it. It's sort of the best method that they've seen so far. So just really encourage residents to get on board, sign it up. Again, use it for good, not for harassment. Finally, a reminder that our new village clerk will be joining us next week. Certainly invite the public and anyone else to stop by and meet her. Susan Calgene, she'll be, I think, then joining us at our next meeting on the 24th. So I would take this opportunity because of that to recognize Chanel Smith, our deputy clerk, who has served so admirably as our acting clerk. This will be her last meeting as the acting clerk tonight, so I'd like to thank her, and also joining her partner in crime there, Mary Beth Kelly, who also works very hard in our clerk's office. And the two of them have really stepped up incredibly during this lull and short staffing period. So I want to again recognize the two of them and thank them. And that's all I have.
I'd like to say to the administrator, thank you for a comprehensive and informative report. It was an easy read, and it answered a lot of questions, and I'm really looking forward to this new format that was developed and implemented. And so I just want to say kudos to you for delivering us a very, very useful and informative report. I have a question regarding, you answered a lot of them in your follow-up presentation tonight, and that's about the additional cost of the snow removal that we've had from this hard winter. Can you give us an idea?
I don't have the exact.
But maybe if it's 30% more than we expected?
It is certainly significant. A portion of it obviously was born in last year's budget, so anything pre-January 1 storms were born in last year. But even this year with the storm, we're still sort of quantifying it. I'm waiting on the latest payroll reports. I'm hoping that we're essentially out of the woods right now. We have I think our last salt orders in and encumbered in the system, so that is one of the factors and one of the developments that I indicated in terms of the budget being a moving target that's going to impact the budget. I'm a little hesitant right now because I don't have all those final figures, but I will certainly have them as part of that overall report on the status of where we projected the budget at the workshops, where we are now based on some of the new developments, including that pension obligation, the sort of extraordinary snow removal expenses, but it's certainly higher. Obviously part of it is on the course of any given year, you project a certain amount for snow, and you invariably always get it in the first 2 months of the year and the last month or so of the year. So that's the other wild card, is we could have a very mild December, which wouldn't, at the end of the year, not make us as high as we expect, or if we have a bad December, it could be worse than we expect. So I will have, again, within the next week or two, when I kind of crystallize all these factors, very comprehensive numbers of where we are, both in terms of DPW overtime, salt, and other snow-related expenses, where that sits with what we had projected in the budget, where we might be able to make that up in the budget. So I'll have that shortly. I'm just not in a position tonight to really give you a number.
So just to continue with that question, because there are winters that we can't predict, do we have something as a financial safety net, like a surplus, that we can draw from, that we put in every year just
we
for
do.
a unusual snow year like this?
Well, we had talked about this, I think, both at a budget workshop and an earlier meeting. We do not currently have in South Orange, and it's something I have recommended, and in hindsight prior to this year, wish we had implemented last year when I first recommended it. But I've talked with the new CFO. He's familiar with it, familiar with it in another town. The state law does authorize you to set up what's called a snow removal trust, where you can fund a certain amount every year if you have leftover, rather than it be just go into the normal process of an appropriation reserve, which you can only use to then pay prior year bills that come in the current year, and then it lapses to fund balance, which then gets sort of subsumed in your overall surplus. You can set up the snow removal trust so that when you have extra in that line, it goes into that trust, and you can build up sort of a balance for sort of the rainy day fund for when you have the bad years. You have that you can tap into, and when you have the good years, you sort of replenish it. So that's something that we will certainly, I think, be bringing forward. It's done by way of a resolution. I would expect to have it in the next meeting or two to establish it. It's a little late for this year because obviously we don't have any extra to put into the fund, nor do we have a fund to tap into. But I think it's important to get it on the books and get in that practice. So,
and I may suggest for you to use an existing resource. Our auditor is Frank McInerney's firm. Right. This sort of resolution and trust fund, and it's really been quite helpful on a county level, exists. So he might be a good resource to talk to him about.
Yeah, I will certainly talk to them. They're always very helpful, and we will consult with them as well.
Okay. And finally, tying into the snow, which also had an incredible impact on potholes. So I don't know if I'm jumping into your area or not. If so, we'll wait for your report.
I haven't counted them.
Okay. But, again, that it has an impact on budget. But what I'm really more interested in, and if it's in your report, Trustee Clark, just let me know and I'll stop. What is our plan for dealing with the potholes? Because they're numerous and more extensive than I can remember. Does one exist? And, how, again, will that impact our budget?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it's potholes in and of themselves are more of a time and less of a budget impact. Certainly during the winter and during the cold months, currently even right now, although we're just around the corner from the asphalt plants opening, asphalt plants are not open, so the only available method is basically cold patch, cold mix. It's a non-hot asphalt mix that you go and you tamp. It serves the immediate purpose where you have dangerously deep potholes that are going to cause damage. It's not really a permanent solution. It does come up fairly soon. So I know Public Works has been responsive. Certainly Mr. Machete has gotten his share of SO Connect notices of reporting potholes. They regularly go out. They respond to those that are reported. They certainly keep their eyes open and identify them. They go out. He sends out a crew, with a whole back, load full of cold patch, goes around, tamps that all in. I will follow up, and I'm sure that they have a system for sort of documenting where those are, because then ultimately when the weather permits, you go back and assess them and more permanently fix them with hot asphalt, and that more often than not involves, cutting them out, saw cutting, squaring them off, getting enough depth that it's, even putting in QP and then putting in hot mix, rolling it, make it a more permanent fix. Obviously, I think part of that involves some analysis. If you know it's a road that's scheduled for reconstruction this year, you probably put less effort into permanent repair to the pothole. If it's one, ideally none of the more recently redone roads, you don't see that. So those ones that are sort of in the middle, where we kind of look at the engineer's overall assessment of road conditions and sort of the current list, which is a ever-evolving list of road priorities. If we look, and currently it looks like we're going to need several years, you certainly invest the time and money to make that permanent repair.
Thank you.
Well, part of that is that, and that was part of the capital budget that we were putting together, were roads and curb monies. And most likely the worst roads that we have on the list are going to have the most potholes, and those roads will be repaired this year. And I've asked Barrett to put the list up that's associated to the roads that will be repaired.
One more question. The Parking Authority Executive Director had indicated in an email last week to resident commuters that the village was pursuing an agreement on South Orange Avenue and Church Street for additional parking. Is there any public update that we can give or a timeline? We have the Parking Authority meeting tomorrow night, and I'm sure they would kick that back to us to answer.
There is, and specifically the references to the parcel of Pride. It's actually a number of parcels that are in common ownership on the corner of Church Street and South Orange Avenue. There had been some buildings that were demolished. There remain a couple of buildings that are essentially closed up and ripe for demolition. We have been in discussions with the property owner, entering into an arrangement where we would have access to those, in exchange for which the buildings would be demolished. As I actually got an email at 5:30 tonight that I've not had an opportunity to review the attached, that has a marked up copy of the proposed lease that our redevelopment council received back from council for that property owner. So I think we're closing in on it. It has not been the easiest negotiation. The property owner in question, is not necessarily always the easiest one to negotiate with. So I will review that. I would certainly hope that we can get this locked up, and then there will be some time period for to coordinate the demolition of the building and sort of creating and grading to make a parking. So, optimistically, hopefully we have those spaces online in 3 months. It's estimated that'll provide an additional approximate 60 spaces, which in addition to the 140 that we have, would give 200 spaces offsetting the 133 lost. Those would be prime spots. Those would actually be closer than Third and Valley, as are the spaces in the lot behind the firehouse. So I would say, best guess somewhere around 3 months.
I would say that you can't total those together. The concerns that I got from residents so far is that once the sports begin at the Baird and the parking that's now being used by commuters, it's bad weather, so, that's fine. But once it comes spring, good weather, sports, we'd like those parking spaces available for the residents and their kids who are going to camp, et cetera.
Is that the ones on Mead and Meadowbrook and
Yeah.
those areas?
Yeah. So I
certainly,
would see those as a
I
net
think
loss.
that is something, obviously this is going to be a learning process. We're going to see where people park. Certainly, to the extent these spots come online and can supplement or replace, and if there is not a demand, we'll look at which ones can we kind of turn back over, and those certainly may be some. We did, initially, I think there was a more aggressive plan with relation to Waterlands, and it was because of those concerns that we scaled that back, and you'll notice in the plan originally where we contemplated potentially even taking 80 up front and then scaling that back to 60 when spring sports started. Given that that was only a month away, we've only now slotted in the Waterlands for 50, which would leave 30 to 40 available. And particularly in Waterlands, because it's more of a late afternoon, evening type turnover, a lot of commuters will be leaving and those will be available. So that's certainly the consideration, is that, when these come online, it isn't necessarily just add on, and particularly if there's no demand, we may take back some of those in the vicinity of the Baird and Floods Hill and all that.
I have a follow-up question to that, because it has to do with communication, not actually the spots, but as you said, the parking authority, the communications wasn't optimal, but I'm still concerned. I still have a question, because the parking specifically on Mead and Meadowbrook and several other places letters went out to the folks who have the blue permits, the residents, the commuter tags. Unfortunately, I don't think the general residents who might just park there for a couple hours to go to the duck pond, whatever, I hadn't seen any communication going out to them. So I'm actually concerned about folks who might have been parking on need just so they could, go to Floods Hill or whatever. There are now new signs there, but I'm curious if there's anything we can do, or maybe it should go to the parking committee authority committee meeting tomorrow. But I am concerned about folks who have normally parked there for an hour or two. They can't park there now because it's slated for commuter tags.
Trustee Rosner and myself can bring it up tomorrow night at the meeting. I was going to ask, Mr. President, could you ask if Mr. Hartwick could come give a update to the Board of Trustees at our next regular meeting? By then, they'll be 2 weeks into this.
I think that's an excellent idea.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can certainly ask them, and to your point, all those spaces are only 6 to 11, so anytime after 11, anybody can park there. So it basically gives the commuter parker the opportunity to get in there early, leave the car there, which doesn't address Trustee Collins' point that in the afternoon then when. But I think your point's well taken. I think we could certainly supplement theoretically, the parking authority's lines of communication are largely directed to the permit holders, so I think it's a good point. It was not one that I had thought of, is how do we notify, short of the signs, right. The general residents who are not permit holders, oh, by the way, you can't park there before 11 o'clock, and certainly would not want them to get tickets or anything because they missed a sign when they've been parking there, to go walk around the duck pond at 10 in the morning for 10 years, and all of a sudden now they're getting a ticket. So it's a good point. We will look to try and get something more directed to the general public, not the permit holders, and try and get that out there and publicize on the website. I think that's a good point.
Lewis,
Thank you.
That brings up, were you finished?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's exactly what I was looking for.
That brings up a point that I made a couple of meetings ago, and an example about parking, even though it wasn't on here, but we knew it was a really, really current and urgent issue. This is example on our conference board meeting that depending on what's on the agenda or what's urgent, we really need to have these department heads or other heads of entities at our conference board meeting. We could be more productive, efficient in addressing issues and getting feedback if they're in attendance, as opposed to having any lag time. So where it makes sense,
sure,
going forward at all our
obviously
conference board meetings.
In hindsight, I'll step up and say I certainly should have been more on top of the parking authority and following what communication they were sending out. But, at that point, it's water under the bridge. I will certainly invite Mr. Hartwick to the next meeting, hopefully to give us an update, hopefully with good news that it's working out. But at the same time, I think everybody understands this needs to be a sort of a learning process, see where people park, what's working, what's not working, where are we communicating well, where are we coming up short. Again, non-parkers, how do we notify them? So we will stay on top of it. I'll stay on top of the parking authority. I'll certainly invite Mr. Hartwick. Can't direct him to come here, but I'll strongly encourage him to join us.
Did you follow up on the other parking lots that we had arranged a deal for, the parking authority arranged a deal, such as Our Lady of Sorrows? The 25 spaces there, which I don't believe have ever sold more than 3 and 4 of them there. And I know it is a several block walk, but it's still shorter than people might have to walk.
From Mead, it's still probably closer than some of the other places.
Right.
Than some of the other alternates, it's got to be as close as Mead.
So Our Lady of Sorrows should be there, as Shari Tefillo, which might require the jitney bus making a stop there, but it was another one. We had agreement for 25 spaces that we could use during the week, and we should keep seeking out alternatives to make it as easy as possible, so people don't wander from one lot to another. I think the people who take the 6 a.m. train, or train between 6 and 7, probably we get to the best spots first, and then it becomes a crapshoot of where you're going to drive around to. We need to have a system to make sure that they're directed to what lots, whether it's based on time slots or based on zones. But we need to have something, and I know it plays itself out this week, and they'll get a better idea. And Trustee Collins, Trustee Levinson, and myself can bring it up tomorrow night at the Parking Authority meeting, if time allows. But it's something that I think you should address with them as well.
I will do that.
Okay. Was there anything else, Mr. Lewis?
No, I was done.
Okay, Mr. Rother, do you have any public updates tonight?
Very quickly, we're bringing to a close the work that we have to do on the recodification.
Mike.
we're working to bring to a close the recodification project, and we have scheduled ourselves to have several ordinances brought to you via the Legal and Personnel Committee at the next meeting. Our goal is by the end of March to have our closeout meeting with General Code and to bring that project to a conclusion. Other than that, I have nothing new to report.
Thank you.
Mr. Roth, is there anything on East Orange Water that the public needs to be made available?
Nothing new on that, no.
Okay.
We are still waiting for the administrative proceeding to be brought to an end by an order. Once that happens, then a lot of other things are going to happen, but that's the next major event there.
But there has been a write-up about East Orange Water and where we are with it on the website.
Oh, yes, thank you for doing that. That looked good. Thank you for posting that.
Okay. Trustee Levison, Finance and IT.
Yeah, again, we postponed the Finance and IT meeting. It will happen at the end of the week, and so we'll report it at the next conference agenda meeting.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Deborah Davis-Ford.
Okay. We had a meeting, legal and personal meeting on February the 24th. There were several things on the agenda. One of the things council just reported on was the recodification project. There were some concerns about sidewalks not being shoveled, and because of the complaints coming in, and how the violations could be better handled and dealt with. And our administrator asked if the code for the sidewalk violations could be paid as a violation first, and then go to court on a second offense. Therefore, we believe that a lot of people, just like with parking tickets or whatever, if they can pay, can avoid going to court. We can avoid a backlog, especially with a season like this of people having to go to court, take off time for work, but just pay and only require that they go to court. Am I correct, Counselor?
Yeah,
on the second violation?
and that will be accommodated within the recodification.
Okay.
There will be a number of such violations which, as a result of the recodification, can be paid directly via mail rather than a court appearance, but that'll be encompassed in that whole recodification.
Well, and in the Legal and Personnel Committee, we've been spending a lot of time looking at enhancing the environment of the work environment of the employees and the culture. And we've implemented a lot of things as we talked about in the past, as professional development, a revamp of the performance evaluation so it's used as a comprehensive tool to identify expectations set for the position or role, and then measure whether or not those were met, and identify areas of challenge and opportunities for improvement. So all those things have been in place, as well as some other initiatives. But during our last meeting, Trustee Collin talked about some sort of merit pay policy, which is very hard to identify and implement in a civil service environment. However, she talked about, and this is exploratory at this moment, and I thought it was an excellent idea, about a reward program for exceptional work where they would be reimbursed for taking classes at Seton Hall University, which is our university right here. So we're in the process of exploring that and to see if we can come up with some sort of program and how it could be implemented, and then how employees would be selected to participate in this program. So I think it's a great idea. Thank you, Trustee Collin.
Thank you.
And this is like Groundhog Day type of item that's been here since even before I was on the board, and even before the decades that Trustee Rosner was on the board, and that's the Stonehouse. So our Deputy Administrator, Adam Lerner, is working on some sort of application. Is there anything you want to share at this point, or no? Okay. And we also talked, Trustee Levinson, that we've been talking about having a meeting with the county engineering on Ludington Brook overflow, and I'm not going to talk about that because that's going to be in the report of our trustee Clark. And at this point, that's all I'd like to share regarding our meeting.
Thank you. Trustee Rosner?
Yeah, first, we had a special meeting about the RFP for the master plan reexamination, which is going to go out for RFP and shortly, as soon as the village administration department has it ready. Or at the planning and zoning committee when we met, following up on the snow removal and how many summonses were given out. I don't remember the number that were given out that date, and I know that the village administrator gave us an update. It was well over 100. We did stress that the summonses have to be given out to the people on the major routes that either walking to the train or for kids walking to school and parents walking their kids to school. Obviously, those streets should be addressed immediately. And that night there was, several complaints that they had, and I know that they followed up on them the next day. He asked us that, and following up on Trustee Davis Ford said also about the fines, and suggested that the fines should be higher than what they currently are, because when they get knocked down, it's actually less expensive to pay the fine than it is to pay someone to shovel or remove the snow. And so that he felt it was time that we raised the fees, the fines on those. And especially you should think about that in the commercial district, where a fine could be less than $100, or and I said we should. I asked them to actually look, thinking of a different way to fine, maybe based on the number of linear feet that they have to shovel, because corner property, could have and the height, because you have a larger amount of snow, and the more snow there is, and the fine becomes even less prohibitive. It's just easy to pay the fine. And some people have a very small piece of property. It seems kind of silly to have the same fine that they have, that someone may have a very large piece of property, especially in the commercial district when you see a whole stretch where it had not been shoveled. And we had one particular commercial property, actually it was a nonprofit, that hadn't shoveled at all.
Can I add to that? For one other thing that we mentioned in legal committee was changing the hour definition.
Oh, right, that was also came up, the number of hours, instead of being, and I didn't get my minutes back yet, I don't remember the exact thing, but I think they said just make it 12 hours instead of daylight hours, but
We'll address that in the code revision.
Fine.
If I can chime in, yeah, I believe
the first night, we had the first late night last month for the building, and he said only one person did show up that night, but we're going to continue with that for the third Wednesday of every month. The building department will be open till 7:30 p.m. And finally, I know Trustee Levinson's favorite topic is changing the ordinance for certain streets at a time when we get complaints. In this case, several years ago, we changed the ordinance on many streets within 3/8 of a mile for the commuter parking, and now people have stretched out just past that, and commuters are parking, and the street that we're addressing next is Rinder Road, which now averages 6 to 8 commuters a day parking on that street. I did have the police department run a check on the plates just to see where the cars were coming from, and none of them, one car was from South Orange, which appears to be a resident who just happens to move the car for the spouse because it's a single-lane driveway, and the other 6 to 8 cars are from out of town, and it appears that they're commuters. So I've asked Sal and the village attorney's office to work on redrafting the residents, if it's the ordinance, if everybody's okay with it, and then we'll invite the residents. And this, by the way, did come from 3 residents who had complained about it, and I did check out the street myself. So it's one of those things. I think my guess is that right across the street, Hart Drive will wind up being the next one that we'll have to address, because that's going to have the same issue. It's just that people right now, when they come from Livingston or West Orange, down off of Wyoming Avenue, it's very easy just to pull onto Rinder Road versus making a left turn against traffic. But, we'll play it by ear on that. But I think right now we're working on Rinder Road, so, and we'll have that ready for first ordinance next meeting unless there's some strong objection, and then we'll send notices to all the residents and so forth, and we know the game.
Does it make sense to just increase the radius, look at the radius, because we can be pretty sure that it will just
Well,
spill over onto
when I looked at
Street?
the map to stretch it out to half a mile, the radius, it doesn't really, there's a couple of other streets that don't really it doesn't seem to add that many more streets. And it may move some of the signs up on some of the streets like Beach Spring and Highland and Tillow, but I don't think it really changed anything dramatic other than Rinder Road, Hart Drive, and Bryan Court, I think was the other one. And going off the other way, it didn't really seem to be any problem whatsoever, even on the streets that are right next to the 3 extra mile, because most of the cars that are coming from out of town are coming from West Orange, Livingston, and those two towns, so it's unlikely that they're going to drive all the way across town to the other side of town. But yes, so, if it was up to me, I would just add Hart Drive, but of course the residents who live on that street are probably going to say, why are you changing our parking? There's no problem yet. So, that's, I don't disagree with it, but those seem to be the only two streets that will really be impacted. And Bryan Court's kind of a hard street to park on anyway because of all the driveways, and it's just a little cul-de-sac, so there's not much room for cars to park on. So that's it for tonight. Next meeting is third Wednesday, March 19th.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Collin? And before you start, I want to thank you and also Trustee Clark for sending in your bullet points for the meeting. Could everybody else please do that? Thank you. Trustee Collin.
You're welcome. The first thing I want to do is just defer to...
send in fewer bullet points.
Yeah. Send in more, talk about less, but...
No such thing.
Yeah.
I wanted to turn it over to Trustee Levison first because I was unable to attend the CAD RMS meeting from the project manager. If you can just give a brief recap on where we are with that project.
Yeah, we've been proceeding fairly well with the CAD RMS, which is the computer-aided dispatch record management system. We had a meeting with the project manager. We have now signed up for a number of program products. The company Enforces is the provider of our CAD RMS system. We are in the process of now building out the data requirements, which basically are identifying all of the street locations and GIS coordinates so that when a call comes in, they input it into the system and it will tell them exactly where that location is. From that, our plan is to parallel that new CAD RMS system in a temporary location within the police station, which has now been defined as the courtroom. We're refurbishing slightly the court space so that we can now move temporarily and test the new CAD system in that space. We're in the process of now constructing out an entranceway so that we meet some of the standards that are required. Included in that implementation is that we now have introduced a new 911 system. It's called a Zetron 911 system, which will be interfacing with, in a much better way, the CAD RMS system. And lastly, there's another component called WTH, which is a graphic representation, which is the GIS module and the graphic representation for the CAD system so that when a call comes in, it identifies it on a map, which they can look up and see it on the map, as well as it provides GIS information for the dispatcher. We are as well looking at consolidating a number of the workstations that are currently at the at the dispatch station so that we have a common view through one keyboard and mouse so that there are about 4 or 5 systems that the dispatcher uses in the process of answering a 911 call.
Thank you for that. Prior to the meeting, I handed out something to all the board members So let's go through this really quickly. The first item from the Public Safety Committee, and the one that is the highest priority that I reported on previously, is the Public Safety Radio Communications RFP. At the top, I put the schedule. As you can see, we're right on schedule. We're at the week of March 10th, and it states that we have interviews with the top-ranked consultants, which we are doing tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. And I thought it was important to also include the scope overview. Phase 1, this project was put out in an RFP with 4 different phases. What's important for you to know is that once we award a contract, it's not for all 4 phases. It's just for Phase 1. And there's no guarantee that after Phase 1 that we move into Phase 2. So if you compare the scope overview against the quotes, the hours, and timeline matrix that I put at the bottom, you can see the people, the vendors who expressed interest. Obviously, on the low end, we had a full quote, roughly around $55,000 for all 4 phases. On the very high end, it was close to $250,000. So the ones that were highlighted in color were the ones that were worth pursuing further. They were the 3 lowest bidders. And there are certainly some discrepancies there. But as you can see from both the yellow and the orange columns, these are the 2 vendors that we're going to be interviewing tomorrow. And relatively close in cost, but their distribution of hours across the 4 different phases is a little scattered, and so we'll be able to ask a few more questions.
Sheena, why don't you describe front end what we're trying to accomplish with that?
Absolutely. I'm sorry, I forgot to do that. There has been a series of concerns from the police department, from the rescue squad. The fire department does relatively well about our public safety radio communications in the village, particularly the police department. We've heard reports from officers that in certain zones in the town that they lose their communications. Obviously, this is a big concern to the Board of Trustees, is that we want to make sure the functionality of all the equipment for our first responders is top-notch. We didn't have anybody in-house that's an expert in this topic, so the most important thing is to bring in a consultant who's going to be able to do a comprehensive review and analysis of the village's existing public safety radio systems and projected public safety radio system needs. As you've heard from Trustee Levison in the past, there's a series of different options, whether we maintain our own infrastructure or we move to a state system or a national system. There's a lot of options out there. The rescue squad recently applied for an AFG to try and get on the statewide network. So essentially, we're looking at police, fire, and rescue, and how in the long term, we're going to move forward with public safety communications, making sure that, we have the best deal, the infrastructure in place, and that there's never a situation where we put our employees in a compromising position because their equipment is deficient.
Trustee Coleman, I have a question. Looking at the various companies and what they put in, there's a wide variance in price. I was wondering if you can explain that, because it concerns me if for some reason they're thinking different things. You also mentioned that in the 2 top bidders, the ones that are in yellow and orange, the fees are relatively close, but the timeline is almost an order of magnitude, and that really concerns me.
We talked about this after we received the responses. We got together as a group. It's comprised of myself, Trustee Levison, Administrator Lewis, our IT manager, Stan, as well as the department heads and the rescue squad, to go over, and we rated them in a matrix and turned that over to the administrator. It was wild when evaluating and having this conversation amongst ourselves, all the discrepancies here, and I'm sure Trustee Levison has his own theories on why certain firms are able to do things faster. They have a lot more employees, they have more consultants, they just move a lot quicker, whereas the other ones don't have as many resources available to them. So something that takes 1 hour for one firm could take 10 for the other, but the actual product still be the same. For the public's benefit, the 2 people that we are going to be meeting tomorrow, one has a completion time in 315 hours, roughly 11 months. The second one has a completion time in 384 hours and 21 months. So almost the same number of hours, but twice the amount of time, almost, roughly. So we'll hopefully work through those things tomorrow, and our goal, if you go back to the top with the RFP schedule, is that we hope to have a recommendation and a contract at the March 24th meeting so we can begin this process.
But you will not be meeting with the others, and so I'm just concerned, again, from...
We shortlisted it. We shortlisted it.
You shortlisted, but do you not have questions then, just in terms of, you got a couple of bids here, one's at $230,000, $175,000,
Yeah,
4 or 5 times.
but one of the other things that we put into the location of those firms, that firm...
is German.
excuse me?
Yeah, go ahead.
He's in New Hampshire, and another one is in Connecticut.
Okay.
And part of the charges were for travel time.
Ah, okay.
But, following up on Steve's point, the firm, the one in blue, which came in third, I guess, on the bids, shows time 452 hours versus the 315 hours of the lowest bidder. And I assume there was something in the bid that shows the reason for that 137-hour difference in time. And you know what it was, that they have to spend so much more time on the same type of bid. And I was just curious, on the one that came in at 140 and 175, what their hours were in the same ballpark.
I can't remember off the top of my head. What I would be more than happy to do is, prior to the vote at the next meeting, hopefully anticipated vote, I'd be more than happy to forward the proposals that came in. I mean, I feel that the committee did a pretty good job vetting them, and it seemed that all of the companies were very competent. It was just, something that they're worth a little bit more than the others, and that's why, you got to love the public bidding process.
It just seems like for those top three bidders, high three bidders, the higher three bidders, there must have been something in them, at least I like to think. And I know the same thing happened with the asbestos abatement, for instance.
Yeah.
The bids ranged from 200 to 600. And so here we got a range from 54 to 230. And it's just such a wide range. It's especially when a large part of it is equipment too. So it's like, it seems very strange that the range would be so wide.
Well, there isn't any equipment
There's no
involved
equipment
in
in
Oh,
this.
there's no equipment, this is just the information? Okay.
This is, Phase 1 is the comprehensive review. Phase 2 is developing a public bid specification package. Also within Phase 2, and I gave you the
Okay.
abbreviated version, is also identifying grants that the village might be able to get. Phase 3 is supporting the village in the evaluation of bid responses and helping us award the final contract, which is Phase 4, which is the
And then we get the
implementation.
system.
Yeah. So
But-
this,
but
So the
what-
21 months timeline would seem to be a deal breaker on that one, which is why it's very curious to know what the timeline for the blue one is, which.
they didn't provide, they didn't
which
follow the
provide, but,
requirements.
because even 11 months seems like a long time to wait to get the radios, which you definitely already said we needed, and to wait 21 months would just seem a deal breaker unless there's something really wrong with the company, the firm that came in with the low bid.
And the interesting thing, assuming that we go with the yellow, this timeline is very much contingent on Phase 2 and 3 getting grants. I think that's the goal, is that we want to, this is money that's available right now in the federal government, and so it doesn't mean that we move through this timeline at this pace, which is why we asked them to specify the hours
Except for
also.
that timeline on the yellow is only 7 hours, where the other two firms were close to 60 hours. So that's where they're obviously winning the bid on, and that's why it has to be questioned, I
Well,
guess.
one of them has, as a professional who they put on the project, is a grant writer.
Okay.
But the other part of it, understanding the consultant's way of doing a project proposal, is that they may not front load, but actually minimize the front as a loss leader to get the other part of the business. And so you need to understand, and we'll ask those
I
questions.
understand, yes, okay.
So that's where we are now, and hopefully, if we can follow our timeline, you'll be seeing something on March 24th, and I will go ahead and forward those out. So if you want to take a look at them in advance, you're more than welcome to. Next, I have, to the CAD RMS discussion, I wanted to give a special thank you to Seton Hall University, which today they confirmed that they will, I reported on this a couple meetings ago, but now it seems like it's kind of concrete. They will be making a donation of desktops and laptop computers, and they're working with our IT manager on just making sure all the software and everything that they need is good. So a very special thank you to them. Public Safety Town Hall Meeting and Community Survey, these were both recommendations from the ICMA report, and I want to thank Janine Buckner, our Neighborhood Watch Coordinator, because she is going to be working out of the Public Safety Committee doing both these things, and the anticipated timeline is sometime in April. She's been working with the Public Administration Program at Seton Hall University on a community survey for our police department to get the type of feedback, et cetera, and then we hope that we can do that at the same time having a Public Safety Town Hall meeting where people are free to come ask questions, meet the department, et cetera. The other thing that I'm working on currently, and I'm really excited to do this, is a public safety annual report. If you remember when I was the chair of the Citizens Public Safety Committee, we had a publication, So Safe, and it was kind of, it just gave statistics that people could learn a little bit more about crime, highlights of stories from the fire department, the rescue squad, and the police department. So it's relatively short, about 10 pages, that just gives you a broad overview of everything that's happening public safety oriented. And so, Mr. President, I'll be reaching out to you for some OEM information, and if anybody has additional suggestions on things that they think the public would be interested in, would certainly welcome those suggestions. Improving emergency preparedness, our CERT coordinator met with both the deputy administrator and the administrator to go over some things related to our EOP and some things in terms of his skills that he'd like to give to the village. I'm really looking forward to working with him. He brings a great deal of talent and experience to our emergency operations. One of the things that he brought up at the last public safety meeting was there's a national special needs registry at ready.gov, and so I was going to ask this during the village president's report because it was a question that was brought up in the public safety committee. Do we know yet whether the information, if we sign residents up on ready.gov, whether we can get that information and import it into Everbridge?
We're actually looking into
Wrong way.
We're looking into that now. There is a enrollment process and sign-up process that we have to do through the county, but we are looking into the different options that the website is available to us.
So for the time being, with special needs, elderly, et cetera, where do we want to send them?
Right now, they can reach out to the health department, and
Okay.
there is actually, the health department gives out a red file card that has emergency information that they can fill out. And what we ask is that they keep it in their house on a refrigerator or by a door. When emergency personnel go into a home, they look for those kind of things.
Okay, great, thank
There's
you.
another part of that thing that that red sticker. We're looking at putting a yellow sticker in the back window, which is a new product, which you keep your information in your glove compartment in your car, so it identifies that the same as this red package that we have that you keep in your refrigerator or in your house. It identifies that the car, you can look in the glove compartment, you can find out the medical history of the person.
Oh, that's great. Okay, just please keep me posted on that, and then we'll figure out a good way to get it out to the residents. I'll go knock on doors also. And lastly, this was a carryover from the Planning and Zoning Committee, as we're also looking at emergency route designations. As you all recall, during the snowstorms, there were times, and there still are, where there's so much snow and it's compounded against, the curb, that at points you had vehicles moving only in one direction. One could pass at a time. Clearly, there were areas where emergency vehicles would have a hard time getting through. So now's a good time, especially since the snow is calming down, to kind of evaluate which emergency route designations we want throughout the village that aren't currently county roads, and if they are county roads, make that recommendation to the county.
I hope you didn't just jinx us by saying the snow has calmed down. I'm blaming you if we get a storm.
No, please don't. It wasn't me, I didn't do it. On page 2, now this is where we get to the really exciting stuff. I've almost matched the Recreation Committee. This is fun. First is the actually this isn't fun. Pedestrian Safety Initiative, Education and Enforcement Campaign. So I won't tell you the long story, but essentially to get to the point, I think we have a real problem with cars not stopping for pedestrians. I think it's dangerous. I think it's just as dangerous as crime, especially if you're a pedestrian. This has been raised in SOTAC by the Senior Citizens Advisory Committee. We need some serious enforcement of state laws. If you may recall, back in 2010, it used to be yield to pedestrians in a crosswalk, and then it turned into stop. And so when I contacted the chief to specifically request more aggressive enforcement, very aggressive enforcement, he made the suggestion, let's go forward with a really robust education campaign first, because there's probably still a lot of people out there who are not familiar with the state law or what their responsibilities are, and I'm more than willing to do that for a little while, but then I do want to see some aggressive enforcement. If you don't know that you're not supposed to swerve around people walking in a crosswalk, there's a problem. And these penalties are pretty steep. So we're going to work in conjunction with SOPD and our Neighborhood Watch. You're seeing a little draft of what the flyer looks like. We're going to distribute through email communications, hopefully get it up on the village website, issue a press release. I know the department is, happy to do this. They just want to do it the right way, and they also have money left in a DOT grant that they received where they'll be using officers to assist in this initiative. Next, and this is the fun one. Okay, so we're having Project Gaslight. Essentially, this has been discussed many times amongst the Board of Trustees, is how light is important for public safety. And as we're approaching the spring, the summer, better weather, fingers crossed, there's going to be more people out, and we want to, quote-unquote, light the night. So Project Gaslight is going to be where we bring in volunteers, and one night, being Thursday, April 3rd, from 6 to 9, probably 7 to 9, at 6 they're going to have some pizza, are going to go out with the new smartphone application that was discussed earlier, South Orange Connect, and we're going to do a full inventory of all the outages. This actually came, I was inspired by something that Trustee Levison had set up a couple years ago, matching Seton Hall student volunteers with the village to go out and do the inventory, so I reached out to them again, and as you can see at the bottom of the flyer, they are partners. This is the SGA president. If you recall, he turned out like 70 people to the police headquarters cleanup, so I'm looking forward to a lot of students participating, and the other benefit, obviously, is getting people more familiar with SO Connect and using that as a way to report outages and other quality of life issues. First night, had our first meeting with the group that existed in prior years, and I can't say thank you enough to all of them for the amount of work that they put in. It's incredible. So updates on the budget, just so you know what we're dealing with. The entire program cost roughly about $30,000 all in. They still have roughly $13,000 left in their account. I'm not making a specific request right now for a South Orange contribution, but I believe at the budget workshop we agreed that we would contribute something, and I have talked to my counterpart in Maplewood, who was a former liaison, and he said he would bring it up with the township committee. So between those three entities, well, the two entities, the existing budget, and hopefully if we can bring in a corporate sponsor or do some advertising, we can get to the $30,000 pretty quickly. And Trustee Schnall and I will be meeting with the volunteers who indicated that they want to be involved this year, probably within the next 2 weeks or so we can start mapping out what we want to do for this year, and very excited about that. Now I'm going to fly, I promise. Irvington Avenue Corridor Advisory Committee met on February 26th. Amazing volunteers. What we did was basically just go over the market research, old planning documents, our smart growth plan from 2007, our vision plan from 2010, provided the history, provided them what the residents, the business owners, and stakeholders told us they wanted to see. Working groups were established, kind of the short-term things that people could take ownership of and start banging out some amazing things for the corridor. Right now it's falling into 4 categories. The first being beautification, which obviously goes back to our capital budget and the allocation we have there. Then we also have branding and marketing. Then we have events. And lastly, it's kind of a liaison to the business community and establishing, and props to Trustee Schnall for working with the volunteers on this, is creating some type of mechanism for the business owners to work together. So the first thing that they're doing is reaching out to all the people who signed up via the surveys to be involved with this initiative. That's roughly 50 to 60 volunteers. Tracy Randinelli has already created a sign-up sheet, so all the volunteers who had indicated interest in this committee will be getting an email message shortly. Hopefully they can be assigned to the different working groups, and we'll be moving very quickly. Lastly, on the Senior Citizens Advisory Committee, a special thank you to Noemi Gisbench, maybe? Gisbenk? It's the first slide. I don't know if I shared this with you, but we had a guest speaker who presented on living cooperatively in a modern municipality, and basically went over senior citizen co-ops. So this is still preliminary discussions, but that's where the Senior Citizens Committee ended up, is that we've looked at the census trends that we are losing a senior population in this community, so we're trying to come up with interesting ways based on what experts are telling us that will help keep seniors here and stabilize the population, keep the diverse representation of residents that we have in the town. So hopefully we can have a formal recommendation to the Board of Trustees, but right now these are the type of things that we're looking at and exploring with the senior citizens community to see if they would be interested in. And I will forward you the presentation that we received a couple weeks ago. That's it. I'm sorry, that was so long. I said we would get out by 9. It was all my fault. I'm so embarrassed.
It's a good thing we only do
That's
action
it.
items off its agenda.
Yeah, I thought you were just getting started there.
I can, yeah, I
And it
know.
was very important, but I'm not so sure about the fun part. We'll show you fun. Just
No,
give
the
it-
gaslight project, that's fun. With the SO Connect? Okay,
But
maybe not.
I see you.
I thought it was fun.
Sheena's
idea of fun.
Just like John Travolta does.
I'd like to suggest to the village president that we stagger the order of committee presentations from
I just get bumped to
meeting
the
to
bottom.
meeting, that way I don't always have to
Are you
follow that.
suggesting taking the Public Safety Committee off the agenda?
Just one point.
You did so good thanking me about the bullets, and then that?
Sheena, could you
Yes, sir.
send an email to me when you're going to do the gas light? I want to notify PSC&G. They're going to get like 1,000.
April 3rd. April 3rd.
No, just as a
I would think we should not notify them, so they're not doing anything especially different.
No, they're gonna
because
just
I'd like
get
to the
inundated with these
snapshot
things.
of-
The problem is trustee Levinson broke his eyeglasses, so I want to point out it's on this handout that was given to you.
I gave you a color
I
copy,
know,
too.
I understand that.
I'll forward the flyer again.
Yeah, I want to forward it to them.
You got it.
Okay.
I'll do it right now.
She got a monocle.
Okay, so to Public Works and Infrastructure.
Trustee Clark, please.
Yes. As Trustee Davis Ford alluded to earlier, we were able to make some headway with the county, and I do want to thank Trustee Davis Ford for paving the way on that, pun intended. I was able to meet with the village engineer. I'm sorry, not the village engineer, the county engineer, specifically regarding Ludington Creek, which is, for those of you who aren't aware of it, a section of the town where we do have some flash flooding issues, and it has been a problem for quite some time. And the engineer for the county agreed that he would help us in that effort. And at the next meeting, I will be bringing a resolution specifically directed to West Orange as far as them diverting and managing a good deal of their stormwater runoff. So be on the lookout for that. I know you're excited. Additionally, I think we can expect to get a little bit more help with the county roads. I don't want to jinx it, so I'm not going to say anything specific out loud, but hopefully there'll be some good news there. Additionally, as snow removal was clearly on everyone's mind, I wanted to bring up a couple points from Tony Grenchi's code enforcement report about snow removal. Specifically, to the ordinance, he requested that it be changed from 12 hours of daylight for removal of snow to 12 hours after a storm due to the short span of days and daylight in the winter. It can actually be 2 full days of 12 hours of daylight before it would have to be removed, so that should be changed. Additionally, Mr. Grenchi suggested publishing a list of licensed snow plows and landscapers so that residents could report unlicensed snow plows and landscapers via the So Connect tool, because we do have issues with unregistered landscapers and unregistered snowplows, and when snowplows especially create damage, it's hard to know who did it. So we could enlist the help of the public if they're aware of who's legit and who is not. And I think the planning and zoning report also discussed the fines as far as snow removal and the sort of having to keep up with the times as far as what the costs are versus the penalties. Additionally, Trustee Levinson suggested adding the elderly. This may kind of wrap over to your report. Trustee Levinson suggested that the list of elderly who have snow removal concerns should be tied together with Seton Hall University students who are available to volunteer for such a thing. And he suggested that the Everbridge system could link those two groups together as far as needs and desire. So that's it for Public Works. I also wanted to report on the Environmental Commission and some of the goings-on there. First, a shout-out that River Day is coming, Sunday, May 4th. So that is the first Sunday in May, 11 to 4, the usual river cleanup and whatever other surprises we can come up with.
Sorry, which does the 4th?
The 4th, yeah, it's the first Sunday in May. Additionally...
Well, on May 4th, I got that email about the, potential closing of a couple of streets. So is that still?
Yes.
Is that plan still, because I know we have to coordinate with the police chief and the administrator.
I have more or less left that on the court of the gentleman who came up with the idea.
Of the resident who came up with the idea?
Yeah, if he's,
Yeah, but I think we're going to have to take the ball from him and decide if we're going to go with that, because if that's the plan, we have to make village administrator aware of it and put something into place and have the police chief monitor it. And, you know, the idea is to have a path that people can go along the river, so they want to close off Church Street. It's the only one that's really that's got a real problem. But we also need to have someone there to help people get across South Orange Avenue and Church Street, because it's the entrance that's used most often for the parking lot for the New Jersey Transit lot. We have to make sure there's signage to tell people to stay on South Orange Avenue or go to South Orange Avenue on Church Street, if we're going to be able to close that off.
right, the idea was to more or less have a bike route that could run along to mimic the River Greenway bike route idea. In part, though, if I
I'll leave it up to
recall,
Trustee Column to tell Mark Hartwick tomorrow night.
I think there is some hesitancy on that, though, because they're not entirely sure that they will be able to get a bike group on board to rally. There used to be a couple towns bike group that doesn't exist anymore, so it's not as easy as it used to be.
One other comment, do you think we can mobilize the CERT team to support some of that effort in crossings or directional?
I asked for CERT team volunteers last year. We did not get them, but we can certainly go back down to Dvorsky and ask again and see if they're willing to. Because I would certainly like to have some extra eyes along the riverbanks during the event as well.
Right.
You know, we usually have some representatives from the rescue squad there, as well as police department, and extra eyes are a good thing.
Meetings
So,
4 minutes.
all for that. So additionally, two other things environmental commission related. There's a green team subset of the environmental commission which is working with the towns of Maplewood and Milburn to develop a sustainable lawns and gardens challenge program, which is aimed at encouraging people to practice more sustainable yard care, to reduce pesticides, to reduce stormwater runoff, and various things like that, which typically, you know, the town can address them on town property, but it's really about numbers. And so we're hoping to be able to start a new program to encourage residents to learn more about it and to partake of those practices, and to get their neighbors to do so as well, and help reduce stormwater runoff and pesticides and et cetera. Additionally, the green teams of Maplewood and South Orange have also teamed up with the PTAs of the Maplewood South Orange School District to present the PTA Eco Forum, which is this Wednesday night, March 12th, 9 p.m. at the Maplewood Memorial Library. The purpose is to build a stronger parent-led environmental programs in the schools through experience sharing and collaboration, and they're going to focus their efforts on 4 categories, being recycling, grounds and gardens, transportation, and then supplementary curriculum for students. So that's the rundown there.
Okay, thank you.
Time
Now,
for fun?
Fun committee.
Fun time?
it is, but you've now set the expectation, so.
Can't help it.
He has 2 minutes.
It's all
Trustee
fun.
Schnall,
So before I start with the Cultural Affairs and Recreation
expecting
Committee.
balloons.
Yeah. I actually do want to have a shout out. You mentioned the Volunteer Summit yesterday. I just want to really give some acclaim to the Community Relations Committee that put together what I thought was a very good event. Several folks attended it from trustees and administration. The idea was to bring together a number of volunteer-based and nonprofit organizations to share in some best practices. Janine Buckner, Alex, and Tom Giordano from the Seton Hall CERT were keynote speakers. We had a speaker from the Neighborhood Association as well as the Essex Time Exchange. And it was just, I thought, a very good event, and I think the organizations that attended enjoyed it. Moving on, cultural arts update. The Piero Gallery is currently, the art show is called Booked 11. It's the 11th annual book arts exhibition. And next up after that will be Breaking Traditions with the Seton Hall University student group. Here in this building, SOPAC, which night was it? Saturday? I'm losing track. It was last night. It was Sunday night. Shout out to South Orange's own Mike Griot, who had Blues in the Loft, which was a fabulous event. Again, several trustees were in attendance, and it was just an all-star set of musicians. It was really fabulous.
Question, was it well-attended?
It was packed.
It was up
Awesome.
in the loft. It was standing room only,
Awesome.
and the energy was incredible.
Howie was tapping his foot like crazy.
And it went late.
It
went
did.
late, and it was Howard's birthday, which is why I think they threw the whole
Happy birthday, Howie.
Happy birthday.
Oh, you snuck that in,
Thank you.
Trustee Chanel. That was
You snuck
sneaky.
that in.
I had to sneak it in.
Let us all sing.
No.
He's 69 again.
Okay. There's also, SOPAC is having their annual gala and fundraiser at the end of May. There'll be more specifics coming out on that, but keep your ears out for that. Moving into the recreation report, resolutions have been completed for the pool concession, so there's a new concession. It's actually the vendor that we had 3 years ago and before. We're used to him. He's done a terrific job in the past, so we'll be welcoming him back. We also re-upped with USA Sports for tennis instruction, and the YMCA is once again providing the basketball arrangement for us. We also, I had mentioned this at a previous meeting, but we are actually now further down the path with the participation in the TRICAN collaboration. And what these are a set of programs for special needs children for recreational sports. So along with this membership now that South Orange has, we can participate in all our children of special needs can participate in these various programs that are throughout the area and region. And thirdly, I had mentioned this before, we now have a confirmed date. I believe it is June 14th, which is Flag Day, for the first, what hopefully will be an annual event for the Kids Triathlon. And so this is a very great opportunity there are 3 age groups. There'll be tiered age groups.
That's fun.
It's going to be a lot of fun. So it'll be when the pool is open. So it's June 14th. So there'll be a swim, there'll be a run, and a bike. And we're actually going to have to work with the police department and public safety to make sure that we'll be closing some roads, and probably rescue squad will need to be around. Not that anybody's going to get hurt, but just in case.
What's the age groups again?
I'd have to confirm, but it's sort of like 8 to 11, 12 to 14, that kind of,
Can any of us participate?
I'm sorry?
Never mind.
Well, you can look under 14. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And it's the day before Father's Day. Another thing, actually, a shout out to Trustee Ford for helping us to try to take advantage or leverage the county's capabilities in creating signage. So one of the things that the town has talked about in general, and certainly the parks, want to have more signs, wayfinding signs to the parks. And we recognize that it's actually fairly capital intensive, but the fact is that Trustee Ford has tried to help us to see if there's a way that the county, who does make their own signs, might be able to help us out. So that would be really terrific and a big money saver for us if that can happen. So thank you. And then other business that's going to be coming in our next meeting. So that recreation meeting was February 25th. The next one will be the fourth Sunday is March 27th. And a couple of items on future agendas that may be of interest to residents if they would care to come out. We'll be talking about discounts for early bird registration. What happens oftentimes with these programs is a lot of people come at the last minute and it's hard to plan. So there's an idea that we can get people to register early and indeed offer them a discount if they do. The other idea that we're talking about is, and it has been used, is Baird as an incubator. A number of programs have begun at the Baird, and then the proprietors have moved on to private space. So Taekwondo is a good example. So we're thinking about that maybe from a recreational standpoint, using Baird specifically as an incubator to promote programs. And lastly, separately, but just another committee I'm involved with, the Village Center Alliance just hired a new director, an assistant to the director. She came on board last week. And what that will do, in addition to having some more manpower, that it will really free up the executive director, who we've met before, Bob Zuckerman, to really focus on recruitment, which is what we really need for the downtown. So I'm actually going to be meeting with Bob tomorrow to come up with a 90-day plan of attack for what we're going to do to recruit some businesses for the downtown. And with that, was that fun?
Briefer than public safety.
Yeah. Relatively, yes.
Wee.
All right, so I think that's everything. Unless there's any other items.
Just planning meeting. Can you send out that?
Yes, the doodle poll, okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's it.
And I just want to mention, and I'll try to send a copy of the resolution, but a couple of months ago, a resolution was passed by the county where hundreds of millions of dollars are going to be invested. A lot of it is from, a significant amount of that is from a federal grant for the S-curves. And they've started to do some preliminary work already on the S-curves, and they're going to be straightened out for safety reasons, and some of the straightening out will mean they have to take some of the land and take the trees down, and then, give land back in another area. But part of this project will include placing 1,000 trees. And then there's an overhead bridge crossing over the S-curves. That is also going to be completely rebuilt, and a new bridge will be put there.
Do you know at this time, will there ever be a point where, I assume what they'll do is they'll work on each side, and is there ever going to be a point where there will be no passing, or?
From what I understand, the S-curves will always be open.
Good.
They won't be closed down, and they put together a process and a plan for that, as part of that process. And I think, if I recall correctly, it's going to take like about a year and a half to 2 years to complete the whole project.
When they originally came to us with that project, and they did meet in South Orange a very long time ago, I don't want to go back into that, but they said one of the main reasons for this project, besides straightening out the road a little bit, was also to fix the drainage.
Yes.
So we wouldn't have that constant flooding at the bottom and
Right.
the icing up in the winter.
Right.
Which
Well,
causes
part
to
of it is
close
safety,
down.
but drainage is right, and that's.
But drainage was, and I think at the low point is now going to be 3 feet higher with a runoff underneath it.
I can't recall about that, but I do recall that drainage was a huge part of this major
And it also was
project.
supposed to improve the lighting on the S-curve.
Yes, they're going to improve the lighting, and they're going to put in lights. They'll be electric, but they're going to put in lights that kind of look like gaslight lamps.
Right.
So the aesthetics, besides the safety and the drainage aspects of this project that will be addressed, the aesthetics will be really nice with the lights, and the new bridge, and the 1,000 trees replanted at the end of
And
the
a
project.
pedestrian,
Pardon me?
and a pedestrian walk.
Yes.
I will say, for whatever it's worth, I mean, one of the things, just from kind of the OEM perspective, that happens in almost every single storm is the S-curves end up getting closed for some period of time, and that causes a couple things. One is that is like our main artery between here and that direction, and especially between here and St. Barnabas.
Right.
So it takes a lot longer to take the ambulance and go through West Orange and go up Northfield and to get to St. Barnabas than it does to go up South Orange Ave. And the other thing is that anytime that happens, especially if it's closed by the county and it's not necessarily our police department doing it, they usually close it right at Glenview. They route people through, if there's an officer who doesn't know South Orange, they route people through Newstead, and people end up getting lost. And actually, maybe about a year ago, there was a woman who was actually going into labor and was trying to drive up to St. Barnabas, and got lost in Newstead on the phone with our 911 dispatcher, and they were lost, and they got redirected into Newstead. They're driving around trying to figure out where to do, and eventually the rescue squad met him, at South Orange Ave, and took him up to the hospital and delivered, as they were pulling up to the hospital. So anyway, that happens a lot, and we always get complaints every time that happens, that basically cars are just driving through Newstead.
Yeah.
So that is something that would be fixed in this, is that the road wouldn't get closed all the time from the flooding, and so that has a quality of life impact kind of all the way down the chain, for whatever that's worth. That's a nice plus.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Move to adjourn and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Good night.
Would you unplug me?